Hello, hey, Sam here, We Love Guitars, and just doing a little bit of an odd thing here. Yeah, I say it's an odd thing, but I'm doing a thing on Mark's Epiphone, which is left and needs a bit of a helping hand because there's something not right about it still. So it deserves to play well, so just as a bit of a kind of get up to speed, I'm going to have a go at it, but I need some sacrificial strings, so I'm going to borrow some off this old monster here, which is the beast from hell, or the beast from Hades, purgatory, or whatever garish, scary medieval place there is. It's the one that Graham made a long time ago, which plays very well actually, but is definitely an abomination of sorts. Anyway, I'm just going to pinch these here strings if I can, because they will do for the purpose of Mark's thingy, but it will take a few minutes to stretch them out. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do that and then I'll come back to you when I've got them on here, and I'm going to just have a little play and assess this thing. So you might see that in fact it's stopped raining for a minute, which is incredibly unusual. It's a bit tidier in here. I've got access to the things I need, and also I've got a second bench here, which because I need to be doing Stephen's Variacs on there, and I need I need to take it apart and put lots of bits everywhere. So I just need that extra space. So I thought I'd better clear everything up a bit, and I've got some rubble sacks with just a load of stuff really that is going to go to the skip because I don't need it. Things like, believe it or not, just really odd bits of 3-ply pickguard stuff that I inherited from Graham, you know, which it seems a shame in some ways, but they're completely bespoke to something he was making at the time, a bit like this thing here. Try to, there you go. A bit like that thing there. Those little bits which I'll never want to use again, and just having loads of stuff like that kicking around it's just taking up precious room that I can't afford. So kind of executive decision is get it the heck out of there and bin it basically, because it's no good to me anyway. So like I say, I'll come back when this is done. See you in a minute. So I have stringed this up with some old strings, and I've checked the relief in it, which seems about right, and I'm just going to double check the action here, which currently stands at just over 1 millimetre there and too high on this side. So I'm going to dial this one in a bit. Okay, that's about right. Just tweak the tuning again. So the thing about this guitar is it has a very slight twist in the neck, which Mark has observed, and I'm not sure, let me find a plectrum, I'm not sure that twist in the neck in and of itself is particularly bad. So it has a plectrum, loses plectrum. Okay. Yeah, not sure that in and of itself is particularly bad. It's very slight, in fact it's hardly noticeable. This thing just needs a bit of tweaking with the truss rod. Now what I'm going to do for once, I'm going to use this thicker truss rod, and I'm going to adjust it with this thing here. And the reason is because on this I want the stable thing more than anything else. It's a bit wider, it's nowhere near as wide as the standard fret leveling beam that most people use, but nonetheless for me it's still a little bit wider than I'd like. However, I'm going to use it because it has a solidity or stability to it which allows me to really get exact, and you know, in a sense it might it might make sense that I try do a few more with this, just to see if this actually works better ultimately than the thinner and more flexible one that I'm using. Very slight adjustments as always. Probably could do with a bit of oil in here just to free that, or WD-40, just to make that adjustment a little easier. But in a way, having a stiffer mechanism, excuse my language matron, is probably a better idea. Okay, so on marks, this has probably got 220 grit on it too, so we're a little bit heavier on the cutting front here, but this is, you know, we want to get back nice playability, or make sure we leave this guitar with really nice playability on it, and see what we can get. You can see straight away some high frets. We fretted this, or I fretted this previously, so it needs a bit more work by the looks of it. So I'm just going to try it out without going too far. And that's the best thing about this method. Is you can stop where you can get it to play, rather than, actually I don't need to do it for the second one. You can stop when you've got the notes playing at the action you've chosen. You don't have to keep on going and taking a sort of an arbitrary or random amount of material off the frets. So essentially we take as little as is required to make it play the way we want it to play. So this is the second track, or the B track as I like to call it, and I can see again some high frets in the area that I kind of suspect. It's around the classic Les Paul neck hump, so whatever I did last time, I obviously didn't manage to iron that out. Tiny bit more. We'll get this playing. It won't take much. I think we just didn't get to the right point last time. Maybe we were in a hurry together or something. Those days in the shed can get quite long and drawn out, so slightly different. It's one of those things, isn't it? You know, a kind of note to self if you're doing something and it's really important. Build yourself the time to take time out, and sometimes when you have somebody with you. Lovely, nice as it is for the company, it can impose come back. It can impose just a slight, slight constraint. You know, that you're both tired after 2 or 3 hours standing up, and you know you want to take a break or other things to do. It doesn't often, you know, it doesn't always work to be kind of doing it all in one go. So I think that's, I can hear a bird of prey out there. I think it's one of the things I've learned, and also I've also learned that I have a tendency to want to rush things, all things, but including guitar setups. So, or rush to give them back. Actually, I like to do a really quick, as fast as possible turn around. Why have I got a piece of string stuck to my foot, pretending to be a worm? It's just really weird. I don't know where that came from. Anyway, yeah, so the sort of tendency to want to give something back means I sometimes give a guitar back while the truss rod is still, I have given the guitar back while the truss rod is still settling, which means that the action I arrive at the end of the setup probably should have had another tweak before it went out, and sometimes I haven't done that, which is a real pain, because it's the only time when somebody gets a guitar and they don't like how it plays, which I hate more than anything else to do that. So I only had to have that happen once or twice, and then, you know, I kind of changed my approach and said, look, no matter how fast I like to get this thing out, I'm going to ensure that I sit on it for a bit and come back to it, so that I have a chance to reassess it and make the final tweaks and get it absolutely right. I mean, you can, with humidity and temperature and environment changes, you can't get the setup exactly right for anybody's exact location, because the truth is what works here in the temperature in south of Devon or whatever may change very slightly for somebody in a different place, you know, and it could be that shortly after they receive it, it may make an absolutely tiny change. So a little bit of zizzing there going on, so a little bit more work on that. Anyway, so yeah, a rule of thumb is just hold on to it for a little bit longer and make sure it's stable before I send it off. Somebody, I don't know quite what the point they were making, but somebody made a comment on a YouTube video yesterday or the day before, saying, Jesus, God damn it, or something, you ain't half murdering those frets, or some US equivalent. And it's funny that, you know, if you looked at this looks pretty extreme, but it is what you have to do with Les Pauls to get the really low action, because for the simple reason that they have that strange hump often have that hump where the neck, the curved part of the neck joins the stiff part of the neck, and you know, if you want the low playing action, then you don't really have much choice but to do this. The question is whether you have, you know, sufficient fret metal to do it and so on, and whether your customer or you wants that playing action, you know, whether it's very important to you to have that fast low playing action. And of course for some people it really is. Some people like it higher, in which case, you know, you don't have to do this and you don't have to take off the fret material, and away you go. You can have your Les Paul with a healthy action that you're happy with, that you don't see somebody doing this to your frets. But bottom line is, if you do want a very low action, which most of my customers seem to want, then this is what it entails. And I did make a point in my reply that of course this always looks worse, far worse than it actually is, but it is destructive, you know, in the technical sense of the term, the correct engineering technical sense of the term, meaning it is taking away material. You aren't going to get a fret leveling that doesn't take away material. Sorry, just the way it is. No amount of twisting a truss rod here and there will kind of achieve what this does. I mean, changing a truss rod will give you more or less action in the middle and more or less curvature at the ends, which has an effect on how things play. But for people who want a really low fast action, tweaking a truss rod is not going to disappear the underlying uneven frets, and if it does, it's only going to do it by raising the action above them, which isn't really a solution. It just means you've got a higher action and you're clearing the tops of the uneven frets. So naturally you are of course getting out of trouble that way, but it isn't the ideal. Okay, that is just about a millimetre, probably a little tiny bit higher than that. I think we're being a bit ambitious if we're just going for a single 1mm. That's 1.2. Still a bit more to do here. It's just each time whenever I stay a long time on a particular track, I'll always recalibrate just to make sure that I'm in the right zone. This one just needs a little bit more tiny tweak, but the tweaks are so small. And that tiniest of tweaks can mean the difference between getting these clearances to play, and they are miniature, tiny clearances. You know, it's just a plain fact that the lower you go on the action, the tighter the clearances that you're working with in terms of the strings as they go over the preceding frets. and therefore the less forgiving it is in terms of subsequent changes to the curvature of the neck and so on and so on. You know, you really, if you have a high action, you don't have to worry about it. It just plays and you hurt your fingers, but it's the way it is. It's getting there, but I'm going to take some more difficult radical. Don't place him. Anyway, you're going to make it play for Mark, that's the point. Okay, we're still on the right shape, so checking the calibration just ensures that we're in the right spot. So Mark brought this one up and took the pickups off it the other day and put them on his black Epiphone, which he finds plays a lot nicer, or until I've done this, certainly was playing a lot nicer. So he's put his Pearly Gates onto the black one, which is a less pretty guitar in some ways. You know, this is a much more classical looking Les Paul with its nice vintage cherry look, but you know, when you've got one that plays better, you're going to go for that one and put the decent pickups on that one. Getting there. I'm just going to keep my eye on the actual height of this. This is still very, very low. Barely on 1mm there. Just going to dial this out a tiny bit more. My standard is 1.5 down to 1, and if anything lower than 1.5 is really testing the action. And in fact, this is about that, and now it's on the last fret. It's on the 1.5 mark, so the tuning has gone a bit. Let's just recover that. Of course, these tunematic bridges have a sort of mind of their own when it comes to the actual way the radius that they have on them. It's supposedly 12, but whether that matches exactly the radius on the actual neck itself I'm never convinced, to be honest. I don't think they do, but I'm going to do a little tiny bit more on this one, just keeping an eye on everything. It looks harsh, but there's always more metal than you think. So just work a little bit longer on this thing, and then we'll move on to the E, which might take quite a hammering as well. I think also with this I want to check all the ends of the frets as well, just to make sure they're nice and tidy and feel good. Okay, so it is the 13th fret that's the killer on this, which is no surprise. It is often the way on Les Pauls. Yeah, we're pretty much there. Right, finally the low E. So I am convinced that once I polish and clean this and sand this up, we're going to have a nice playing action. It just shows you know, obviously I didn't go as far as I needed at the time. It may be that it's been altered in terms of the neck relief since, but I doubt it. I think it's probably just more that in the time we had available, I probably didn't go far enough with the fret leveling, which I'm now going to do, or I now have done. And I'm going to work up from the edge up onto the low E track and make sure the edge is pretty robustly tackled. It's looking so far good. Yeah, these here, 12, 13 and 14 that have been the problem. But we'll get those hammered out of the way. And now that is deceiving because that's actually hitting, believe it or not, it's hitting the pickup, which isn't a very good indicator. You could keep on fret leveling away until the thing was dead if you weren't careful, without realising that you're actually not getting fret buzz. What you're actually getting is the strings whacking onto the pickup poles. Not good. I'm just going to bring these up to where they ought to be for this. Okay. And take these down a fraction too. There you go, I'm happy with that. Dirty fingers, as always, job done. Fret levelings go away, and now what we've got is a set of frets that will polish up nicely. And I can bin, chuck away, as we say over in the UK, chuck away my... Hello, what have you got, Morris? Come on then, show me. What have you got? Well done. Well done, Morris. So, an example of what Morris catches, a little vole, and it's going to go into the vole cage, which is sort of almost ready. Move things out of the way. There you go, pal. Off you go, run off safely. There you go, you saw it live. Well done, Morris. Can I give you a bit of praise? Well done, Hunter. Good boy. Right. That's that's Morris taken care of. So there you go, a little catch. Baby vole, may or may not survive. It's going to sit in the cage for a little bit, and I'll give it some food and water after it's calmed down a bit. Won't really be in the mood for any of it now. If it survives the first hour or so, then it should be a potential survivor for a release tomorrow. You know me, leave it alone. He's so bad. His brother, her brother, his brother, his sister, you know what I mean. Anyhow, so we're going to carry on with this one for a minute. Yeah, tomorrow we're on a mission up to the doctors in Salisbury, so it's a hell of a drive for an appointment with a specialist. But that's how it goes, and so we'll be that's a day out of the guitar realm, but I'll take some good audio books and we should stay on. We should be able to entertain ourselves on the way up. And Wednesday, be back in the shed, hopefully. Wednesday would be good to do the Squire Bullet, which is a guitar that Stephen's left with me, one of many that he's bought me now, but he's left me the Bullet, and it's one of those that he currently loves how it plays for such a budget guitar, and I understand what he means. It's a very basic Strat copy with and the body has cracks everywhere, neck pocket cracks, body cracks. It's, you know, on paper it's a wreck, but it's a great little thing to play, and it's one of those that, because it is so humble and yeah, unpresupposing, you know, it's not like hasn't got an ego about it. It's just a budget guitar that does well. So because of that, it's worth just cleaning up. We'll get new strings and everything on it, and just take the action down a tiny fraction. But so here I am marking up the neck again, or the frets I should say, with my Sharpie. Yeah, big Sharpie, it's just black. I always thought it was blue a minute ago. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, so I'm going to do the fret re-crowning thing here with the Stumac tool. And this will be, I don't know if this is jumbo or medium. I think this is medium, so I'll use my medium edge to the file. And the idea here is just to reshape the frets, which I've flattened at the moment, or put some flat spots on I should say, and then we just reshape them so that they have more of an arch form than they currently do. We have to do it in such a way that it doesn't miss the thing. It often happens with this offset one because it's got a curve on it. Yeah, we have to do it in a way that reshapes, removes the flat spot, but does it without lowering the overall height of the fret. Because if we did that, we would mess up the relative levelness that we've just worked hard to achieve. So it's not something we want to do. Anyway, so I just, it's a pretty quick operation with this tool. It scores highly for ease of use. It is quite expensive to buy, but expensive I guess is relative when you, and it's not criticism of it I should say, it's relative when you consider the amount of time and thought or energy it can save you. So in a sense it's not really expensive, but in cash terms it's about, I don't know, £80 or $80 or something, I can't remember now. It might be cheaper since there are some others on the market as competition. Sometimes what you find is as the frets get a little lower, you can tend to hit the side, the fingerboard either side, especially when you kind of dig down a bit. And just hopefully we can just oil that out when it comes to finishing off. It's just a sort of, it's just a kind of shiny dent. It's not a big deal. In fact, it's a kind of like a skid mark made on the filings, so it's not that bad. Some of the heavier hit ones here that were flattest take a bit more time, as you can see, to round out. You just have to be patient and work them quite thoroughly. And it's been a funny time here. I've kind of been letting go of chasing, or even thinking about chasing, any corporate work. Had a bit of potential work, came up earlier in the year, and I went to a meeting and had a few conversations with some people, but it hasn't materialised, so it may be, it looks likely that I won't be doing any this year. And actually I'm kind of half thinking maybe I won't be doing any again. And it's a funny one because I don't really know, I don't quite know how I feel about it. In a way it was a bit of an ideal world situation, you know, to be able to have a couple of corporate style jobs and then spend a lot of time doing guitar stuff, and it is sort of idyllic. Let's just take, actually these stay on because of the little clips, that's good. Yeah, it's a bit of an idyllic sort of thing, particularly if you don't have to push too hard, and I'm not very good at pushing hard to go out and hunt down corporate stuff, so I think I've kind of allowed myself to leave it drift, mainly because I can't play that game of chasing down schmoozing and chasing corporate work, and I have to really ask, is it that I don't believe in what I did? And it's partly, I think it's more that there's something about not just guitars, but let's just say something like doing guitars is it's very tangible. You know, when you make a difference to something and it works, or you make a guitar and somebody plays it and loves it and goes and uses it, there's something, or when I play my own guitar that I've either set up or made, every time I play it there's a great sense of satisfaction to just intellectually know, wait, I made this from fresh air, you know. And so it's a tangible reward, and I think a lot of people who work in normal grown-up things, you know, like regular jobs, I think a lot of us get to a point in our lives where we're just sick of the sort of abstract nature of everything we do. I'm not saying it's for you know, that's the truth for everyone, but I think there's a lot of people who probably recognise that, where, you know, you can work all day. When I say work, I use inverted commas. You can be in the office all day and quote unquote work all day, and yeah, you might be in one of those jobs where you don't. It doesn't seem to matter what you do. Nothing changes. So you can either do brilliantly and kind of everything just rolls on, or you can do practically nothing and everything seems to just roll on. And or even if you work really hard, and maybe if you're lucky you get a bonus or something to confirm you worked hard. I think a lot of people, me included, I think just it wasn't very tangible. You couldn't really splinter, damn it, into a cut that I've already got. Well done. Yeah, for me it feels a bit abstract, that's what I'm saying, and I much prefer tangible stuff. And I think, you know, when you get to a certain age, you know, you think, well, what shall I do next, if anything? You know, alongside, do I need to do something else as well as this, or more of this, and different way of doing this, or whatever. Whatever it is, I've been thinking of. I think you know, at this age of my life, I think I just have to be doing something that's tangible. And if I can't do something that's tangible, then really I don't want to be doing stuff just for the sake of it. And in some ways a bit of me goes, well, that's really irresponsible. You know, you've got to, surely you should be preparing for your future and blah 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 blah, and paying this and paying that. And then, oops, that was a bit thin. And then another part of me goes, well, do you know what, you may have 20 years left. If you did, you'd be incredibly lucky. Maybe you've only got 5 or 10 or 3, who knows. 54, you can't take anything for granted. And I just think, whatever it is I do, it's got to be tangible, it's got to have a tangible reward. Right now, this feels much more tangible, even if, you know, the financial rewards aren't so great. It's more because I don't have so much control over my order book, as they say in commercial terms. And I don't have every single slot of every day booked up, which of course you have to do if you're going to stay afloat in this kind of thing, or make good money anyway. But those issues aside, it still stands for the kind of thing that really makes me tick, which is things you can see at the end of the day that you've done and that work, and change something small, even if it is only small, but change some little thing in the world. And I think honestly I spent too much of my life doing intangible things for too long. I mean, you know, there was a period of time before I stopped working for the company I worked for in London, where, because the work was scarce, you know, we, as a group of people, we were kind of, not forced, that was the wrong word, but we ended up kind of being in the office a lot. And of course, in a way, that's sort of death knell, that's the word, to, you know, a consulting company, because if you're sitting in the office, you're not earning money from clients, and therefore you're in trouble. Then I just remember too many days in the office trying to get something going from within the office, which is a pretty difficult place to do something from. It never really works. And in a way, getting paid a salary for sitting there not really achieving much is almost worse than not getting paid at all, if you see what I mean. Of doing nothing or doing something completely different and not getting paid and having to work a bit more on your wits. So kind of I was glad to not be doing that when I stopped doing it. But you know, I'm in that place right now where I kind of regularly think, well, what else should I be doing? Could I be doing? Not should, actually, could. There's so many possible things. But what I don't think I'm any good at is going through motions. I guess that's what the roundabout way of saying is. Unless it's something tangible, it's not something I can really do. I can't work in a sort of a corporate office thing where you push paper around, or you know, a public service type of thing, where a lot of talking happens and not a lot of doing happens. Partly why one of the many reasons why I sort of gave up on academia eventually. I think one of the most rewarding things for me, most tangible things, I think, is having written and published an ebook on guitar setups. There's something really nice about. I read some. Was it this morning? Yeah, I was reading it this morning. I'm just reading I think it was the Amazon preview bit that you can download. Anyway, I just happened to sit and just read it because having finished it, I didn't read it through too much other than proofreading it. And believe it or not, there was still some errors got through, and I found a couple this morning, little tiny things, but bleeding annoying nonetheless. Anyway, but errors aside, what was fantastic was just reading how it read and kind of knowing in some ways how easy that was for me to write, because I don't have a problem writing about something I know at all. And actually, when you're dealing with something you know, for me that was an example of not only how effective I think it is as a book, but it also how enjoyable and pleasant, silly crap word, but you know, how pleasant it can be to actually write and produce that. And then of course on top of that there's the other things which are obvious but worth saying, and that is, you know, when somebody buys it and money goes into a PayPal account or whatever, or you get a thing from, well, you look on Amazon, you don't get a thing from Amazon, but you look and it's sold a copy to some person you don't know. There is something that adds to the tangibleness of it, you know, that it's a real thing you did, and it's not just in your head, or it's not just something you shared with friends, it's out in the world. And that's a really rewarding thing, and I would like more of that. I'd like to continue that sort of thing, and I don't want to ever go back into fakery, you know. And actually it's interesting because a friend who does things a particular way or is part of a particular industry up in London, very kindly, in the spirit of genuine support, kind of offered me a little bit of advice on marketing, and then I have to say the way they recommended it kind of is almost the exact opposite of the way I want to do it. You know, and it's not something it would be fair to get into a discussion with them about, because it seemed like it was very critical of their advice, but it was just so not me or the book I'd made to do it that particular way. You know, this person works in a very different field of sort of coaching and coaching field, and one of the things coaches do a lot of is make online content or saleable content and stuff. So you know, there's a whole tradition of how they market it and sell it, but it just doesn't feel anything like the way real guitars would do things. And some people would say, well, you're not going to make loads of money then, and I think I would rather not and be comfortable about the way I went about it than to become something I'm not. Anyway, okay, so what I'm going to do with Mark's Epiphone Les Paul is I'm now going to polish out the frets, and at the same time I'm going to concentrate quite a bit on just softening off these edges, just to make sure this thing hasn't got any sharp points when he comes to play it after this, because there's no reason why now it's a little bit sharp up here because I couldn't get the file all the way up, but I can get at this with sandpaper if I'm careful. So I'm going to go off camera to do that because it's quite boring, and then I guess it will be time to, when it's done, give the fingerboard a clean, put some oil on it, and then add some, or fit some new strings and take it from there. And with a bit of luck it should be a nice player. I think I'll put 10s on it since I've got 3 sets sitting there at the moment. It's also a short scale, so it should suit a 10 quite nicely, sir. Yeah, and then we'll try it out. So I'll see you when this is oiled and ready to restring. Blah blah blah, listening to the radio, so sorry if it gets in the way, but I'm listening to them talking about the slightly unclear load of nonsense that is, I don't know what it is, the government's position on what will happen to EU people, whether they can stay or whether they have to go. I guess because it's not directly affecting me, I'm not sure I have the faintest clue either which way, but you'd be forgiven for not knowing. Whoops, put the phone on stun. Anyway, Martha is in Romford. Oh, come on. I know this is probably copyright the radio station. No ownership implied or intended. I'll probably have to have a performing rights license, so I'll just go and switch this off so I don't fall foul of those rules. Right, off. So I am restringing the Les Paul with 10s, and then once that's done I shall let it sit for a while and then give it a go. But we should be there, and done the necessary beating the frets into shape, into compliance I should say, making sure they do what we want them to. Now what I did on this also is I turned the screws round to face the front, which makes it easier to make adjustments to the intonation, and it doesn't make any difference whatsoever to how the guitar plays. That's rule number 1. Yeah, it's just a personal preference, but also for those who prefer you know, access to it, I find it a little bit easier from the front in some cases. In this case it's not really much of a muchness either way, but I've gone and put it on from the front to begin with. As you know, it's one of those things that you probably find some people who will state with kind of overwhelming authority that it has to be one way and not the other, and it's clear, like all good things, it's my interest would be, okay, give me an argument why. And that's something I always want to know. What's the argument why? And just because isn't enough. You know, I don't think it was ever enough for me or you as a kid, and I don't think it's going to be enough. It's never enough for me now, because somebody said so in the luthier trade, or Gibson said so, or it was in a picture once on a Gibson's website, or I saw it in a guitar show. I always say time and time again, don't do anything just because, you know, or because somebody says so, including me or anyone, especially me. You know, don't take anything I say as gospel truth, or anybody for that matter, question it. But if you find it useful as a start point, then no problem at all. And I think that's the That's the approach I've always wanted to take with this. And it's difficult because in some ways, or it has been difficult in some ways because some people, hang on a second, let me go over the top. Some people they read when you don't claim authority, they read it as lack of authority or a lack of assertiveness or whatever, you know, that you obviously can't know what you're talking about because you don't insist that it's the truth. And the mistake there is to assume that shouting your knowledge or your certainty that something is the way it is equals it being the way it is. I've always said, you know, I respect people, anybody, more for questioning and coming to their own conclusions about things, and treat everything as a start point, you know, and that's what YouTube actually and the web is really good for. If only people just treated it like source material that feeds into their ability to assess critically and work out what's useful and what isn't, and then to kind of synthesize the information that they find into something useful, into a conclusion or a take on things that's useful to them. But unfortunately, not enough people seem to do that. Too many people just take one side. We have this culture that seems to push this binary thing, either or. I think Mark's going to like this. Anyway, just looking at it now. Yeah. Yep, looking good. That's about right when you're playing at the top there, that's the same distance, about 3mm max. And then just pull these a little bit more and we're away. And I'll hang this up and then play it a bit over the next while, and I can move on to other jobs to do. You can see there's a couple of frets here that aren't seated the way I would ideally like, but I guess that was the sort of price we paid working with a set neck Les Paul. Sometimes you have to work with what you've got you know, as it's seated, and you can level them into shape and they don't move. It just, you know, I can see a tiny lift at the end of some of these, which isn't perfect for my liking, but it doesn't have any impact on how this will play now. So a little last bit of stretching here, and then I will be ready to hang it up or take it in the house and give it a try out. Until there's no detuning there. Tiny bit of I don't know if it spells or slight bit of slap on the string, on the frets, whether that's because of the thing. Has it got enough? Yeah, it's got enough. tens on it. That's put a little bit more of a curve in than we had at the beginning. It's adequate, well, not too much. Get spins out of everything. Nothing choking at, which is good. Yep, happy with that. Okay, hang her out the way, hang her high, and then take it in the house when I've got a moment. Dust off. Fret dust on the front there. There we have it. Les Paul, Epiphone Les Paul, I should say. But it's a Les Paul nonetheless. Okay, that's that one done. And also we've got the shed tidied, which is great. I can put my tools back and then we can start again with another guitar. Which I think, in this case, will probably be the Bullet. And then we'll go from there. But yeah, Epiphone Les Paul.